Philosophical foundations. The philosophical foundations of education, as they derive from the philosophy of Paramahansa Yogananda, are next presented. The foundation statements offered are those which stand in principal importance and which derive from the philosophical discussion presented herein. 1. The only reality of man is his soul is a part of God. God is perfect, therefore, man is essentially perfect. All man has to do is improve the knowledge of his perfection. This is the foundation statement. 2. All knowledge exists, and it exists within the consciousness of every man. 3. Learning is a discovery process as it entails the clearing away of intrapsychic impediments, thus enabling awareness of the resident knowledge. 4. One basically learns by teaching oneself, the external teacher being principally the facilitating stimulus to the inner true teacher. 5. Concentration of the mind is vital to the access of knowledge. Instruction in practical and effective methods of concentration should be offered the student. 6. Man manifests differential learning abilities and needs at different times. One must begin where one is at. Therefore, teaching must determine the needs and abilities of the student and be adaptable to them. 7. Faith in oneself is of absolute importance. To enable meaningful learning to occur, only positive ideas, words, and methods should be used in the educational setting. 8. Sri Yukteswar commented that good and positive suggestions should instruct the sensitive ears of children. Their early ideas long remain sharply etched. 9. Truth is knowable and should be taught as objective that is communicated and subjective that is experienced knowledge. 10. Truth, as Yogananda defines it, is no theory, no speculative system of philosophy, on intellectual insight. 11. Truth is exact correspondence with reality. For man, truth is the unshakable knowledge of his real nature, his self as soul. The end of all education is to learn how to live rightly. To do this, man must know his true nature, the true nature of creation, the relationship between the two, and the goals of life. He must then be encouraged through positive example, constructive environment, and facilitative educational processes. The pedagogical teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. This section addresses the manner in which Yogananda brings to the educational setting his philosophical foundations. In discussing his pedagogy, it is essential to first review the traditional Vedic approach to education. The importance of this review is predicated on the fact that Yogananda clearly bases his educational system on this tradition. Ancient Vedic ideals of education. The scope of the Vedic educational ideal encompassed the entire life of man and was divided into 4 stages known as the 4 ashramas. Yogananda identifies and outlines these stages. The 4 ashramas are physical, mental, moral, and spiritual education of the celibate student, brahmacharya. Fulfillment of householder or worldly responsibilities, grihastha. Retirement from the world to seclusion or an ashram to devote more time to spiritual pursuits and thinking of God, vanprastha. Complete outer as well as inner renunciation of all ties to the world, sannyas. Though complete renunciation was generally the 4th ashrama, it was not confined to that state, but was advocated earlier in life for those who felt the supreme desire for God alone. By following the 4 ashramas, man was taught the art of living and right behavior, given an opportunity to fulfill his material ambitions and responsibilities, allowed time to contemplate his spiritual life and make a greater effort for self-realization, and then encouraged to give his life, his all, back to God, from whom all gifts of life and life itself have come. The first stage, ashrama, is of principal importance for present purposes, and Yogananda unambiguously held the ancient Vedic approach for this phase as the ideal. He recounts the nature of this instructional period and the environment in which it took place. The education of youth in ancient India was ideal. At the age of 9, the pupil was received as a son in a Gurukula, Guru's family home, as a seat of learning. the modern boy spends annually an eighth of his time at school, the Indian spent his whole time there. Professor S. V. Venkateswara writes in Indian culture that through the ages, there was a healthy feeling of solidarity and responsibility, and ample opportunity for the exercise of self-reliance and individuality. There was a high standard of culture, self-imposed discipline, and stern regard for duty, selfless action, and sacrifice, combined with self-respect and reverence for others, a high standard of academic dignity, and a sense of the nobility and the great purpose of human life. Yoganand firmly upholds the perenniality of the Vedic ideal, for he admonishes one to see life as divided into 4 periods, during each of which the main focus should be on developing efficiency in the activities appropriate to that part of life. While adhering to the Vedic concept in principle, Yoganand does render his prescriptives in a contemporary Western mode and vernacular. For example, his prescriptive restatement of the 4 Vedic periods is rendered as follows. From age 5 to 25 years, the child should receive character training and become instilled with spiritual ideals and habits. As he grows into adulthood, he should get a general education, learn efficiency by study and observation, and seek specialized training in some work to which he feels suited. From age 25 to 40 years, as an adult, one should fulfill family and other obligations to this world while striving to keep a spiritual balance. From age 40 to 50 years. During this period, adults should live more quietly, studying inspirational writings and keeping abreast of progress in the arts and sciences and spending more time in meditation. From age 50 on, one should spend the last part of life in meditating deeply most of the time, and through the wisdom and spirituality thus acquired, in rendering social and spiritual service to others. In this example, the restatement of the 4-period ideal demonstrates that ancient philosophical religious principles can be faithfully and meaningfully rendered in a relevant, contemporary context. This is a condition necessary for Yoganand to achieve if he is to successfully universalize the Vedic principles of right living and make them viable for contemporary Western and Eastern living as he purports to do. The How to Live School concept. It was earlier stated that Yoganand conceptualized man as a true being and avowed that a balanced education necessarily attended equally to each aspect, the physical, mental, and spiritual. It is further held that only when this balanced approach is realized in practice, that true education can be said to occur. Some of Yoganand's views on his How to Live School concept is rendered in the following: why not take the proper educational steps to create How to Live schools, where the art of living and a balanced development of all human faculties would be taught. I consider properly organized schools as gardens, where infant souls are grown and nurtured. The gardeners should be well selected and given cooperation by parents and the public. We should never neglect teachers, for they are soul molders. The care and spiritual nourishment of the early life of a human plant usually determines its later development. I sincerely praise the modern school system of America and its constantly improving methods of intellectual and, to a certain extent, physical training. But one cannot fail to point out its main shortcoming, a lack of spiritual background. The system badly needs to be supplemented with moral and spiritual training. The boy, who belongs intellectually to Class A, or who is a great baseball or football player, often attracts notice and is encouraged by the teacher, but very few observe or warn him rightly if he is leading a dark Class D moral or spiritual life. Where is there such a school, one that adopts definite measures for developing the whole nature of man, teaching him the true art of life, and fitting him to go through the various minor tests, and ultimately the final examination of life? Such schools are urgently needed to teach the arts and sciences of all-round growth. In such a How to Live school, the science of physical, mental, and spiritual development should be taught to children, whose minds are still plastic and whose energies are as yet unguided into any definite channel. Adults too may master the subjects in night school, if they will exercise willingness and patience, while the good habits are displacing the undesirable ones. After a thorough training, the students of such a school should undergo ceaseless introspective examination throughout life, and the various diplomas won will be health, lame, efficiency, wealth, and happiness. In another equally cogent statement, Yoganand further elaborates the need to invoke the means to educate the mental, that is psychological and spiritual aspects of man. Physical diseases, being tangible, painful, and repugnant, arouse our active resistance, and we seek to remedy them by exercise, diet, medicine, or some other definite method of cure. But psychological diseases, though the root cause of all human woes, are not prevented or attended to promptly and are allowed to wreck and devastate our lives. Educators will hasten the true progress of civilization only when they themselves first learn and then teach others how to develop harmoniously the factors of life and of man's nature. This is the true education and all-round human culture that the entire world is seeking. Educational authorities deem it impossible to teach spiritual principles in public schools because they confuse them with the varied conflicting religious dogmas. But if they would concentrate on the universal principles of peace, love, service, tolerance, and faith that govern the spiritual life, and devise practical methods of growing such seeds in the fertile soil of the child's mind, then the imaginary difficulty would be dissolved. It is a great mistake to ignore this problem just because it is seemingly difficult. Many college graduates leave their universities with a top-heavy, book-inflated head and are unable to walk straight on the path of life because their legs of will and self-control have been almost paralyzed through disuse. They tumble headlong into the pit of wrong marriage, sex misuse, inordinate dollar craving and business failure, because they have not been taught any use of their college-sharpened mental blades of smartness except to hurt themselves. Many young men seem to take pleasure in doing those things that react to their own disadvantage and suffering in the end. They also are vicious, who do not prevent the spread of vice and who do not teach others to be virtuous through their example. Schools, colleges, and society have not tried scientifically to prevent crime by eliminating its true cause. Relative to Yoganand's two preceding statements, 3 points stand out in particular significance. First, Yoganand states that true physical, mental and spiritual development is a science. Relative to this science of development, he admonishes educational authorities to focus on the universal principles underlying the necessary threefold development process and to devise practical methods for imparting these principles. The second point regards present systemic deficiencies. When considered against the balanced approach he espouses, it stands compelling clear that Yoganand finds the spiritual principle deficit in American education. This is also true as far as modern Indian education is concerned. In modern times, this can also be seen in Indian educational system. There could not be a clearer statement to this effect than when he writes, Sri Yukteswar, like many another sage, grieved at the materialistic trend of modern education. Few schools expound the spiritual laws for happiness, or teach that wisdom consists in guiding one's life in awe of one's maker. Young people, who today hear in high schools and colleges that man is merely a higher animal, often become atheists. They do not attempt any soul exploration, or consider themselves, in their essential nature, to be images of God. Emerson observed that only which we have within can we see without. If we meet no gods, it is because we harbor none. He, who imagines his animal nature to be his only reality, is cut off from divine aspirations. In educational system that does not present spirit as the central fact of man's existence, is offering avidya, false knowledge. The third significant deficit is adequate and proper mental training. His statements on this deficit appear to require no further amplification, it being all too painfully self-evident and true. And it seems Yoganand also holds some reservation regarding the adequacy or effectiveness of physical training. Educational methods. This section briefly looks at the schools and educational activities currently being engaged in by Yoganand and his international organization, Self-Realization Fellowship and Yogoda Satsanga Society of India for a look at the way Yoganand himself developed and conducted his schools. Ghosh, 1980 provides a graphically detailed and sensitive overview. He recapitulates his personal observations. In all of the schools, the academic curriculum and spiritual routine were balanced with recreation, sports, and picnics and hikes to nearby scenic spots. All who had the opportunity to come into contact with Mejda, that is Yoganand, knew that his spiritual ideals and precepts of justice could not be compromised. But his manner was so charming, and his heart so loving, that no one felt rejected or uncomfortable. His sweet smile was always present, and in the warmth of that glow, all hearts and minds were caught. On the other hand, when Mejda decided to get to the bottom of a matter, or to make it a point of issue, there was no avoiding the sharpness of his perception. His testing was severe indeed. The rules and regulations of the Ranchi Ashram school were strict. Rising at 5 in the morning, the boys lined up outside for group chanting of prayers. After bathing and cleaning their rooms, at 6 o'clock, they again met together for exercises and meditation. Mejda himself taught advanced methods of meditation of boys over 12 years old. The students wore the simple, coarsely woven cloth of villagers. Clothing was kept spotlessly clean, as were dormitory quarters and the ashram grounds. Under Mejda's watchful eyes, the ashram school flourished in an orderly manner. No undisciplined behavior escaped his attention, but he approached every infraction with love and understanding. He would draw the offender aside and explain to him clearly the consequences of his wrong action. He was so compassionate and understanding in his discipline that students were prompted to be good from the force of his love, rather than fear of punishment. Mejda was like a father and a friend to the boys. No one ever felt any hesitation to approach him with a personal problem or difficulty, knowing he would always be sympathetic and helpful. He participated with the boys in all their activities, even games. His presence in the school was a constant source of inspiration, hope, and reliance. To all, the students and teachers, Mejda's word was like the word of God. He constantly spoke of the need for seeking God, for uniting heart, mind and soul with Him. And he inspired everyone to make that sincere spiritual effort. All those who came in contact with Mejda felt his power to open their hearts with a mere touch or look. Mejda taught that the very basis of spiritual development was right behavior, yam and niyama, the moral code based upon religious statutes from time immemorial. And along with right behavior, he urged the harmonious development of body and mind. He said that a sick body aggravates the mind, a lazy mind destroys both health and spiritual development. To attain a significant degree of realization, one needs a sound mind in a healthy body and a positive mental attitude. Self-Realization Fellowship, SRF, does not, as yet, operate any schools in the Western world. However, Yogoda Satsang Society, YSS, does operate an extensive educational system in India. SRF YSS educational institutions in India are currently 18 in number. These include schools of music, crafts, and fine arts. Montessori type, primary, junior basic, high, boys and girls, 3 colleges. An overview of the extent of the educational activity is offered in SRF's account of its educational efforts in India. For the past decade, YSSRF educational institutions in Ranchi, Bihar, India, had extended their already overcrowded facilities to accommodate increasingly large numbers of enrollees. 3,000 students shared classrooms in 3 daily shifts. 50% of the enrollment at Ranchi consists of Aborigine and other underprivileged children. In 1976, land finally became available and a new site for the much-needed expansion was dedicated in March. In a message from YSS SRF President, Daya Mata read on the occasion of the laying of the foundation stone in April by Dr. Jagannath Misra, Chief Minister of Bihar, she said, "As the stature of a nation tomorrow is determined by the caliber of the students today, let us all unite in the prayer that as we lay this foundation cornerstone, we are laying a foundation for a better tomorrow." Dr. Ramraj Prasad Singh, Education Minister of Bihar, visited the VIS's SRF schools and colleges in Ranchi on 7th May 1976. Dr. Singh commended the high academic standard in the Yogoda institutions and commented, "This is very much in line with the Prime Minister's directive for raising the standard of education in India." Dr. Singh was also pleased to see that VIS's SRF students excel in extracurricular activities such as sports and music. Insofar as all principal educational activities are presently being conducted in India, the focus of Yoganand's methods is necessarily on those activities. It is reasonable to presume, however, that when schools begin to officially operate in other countries, the same principles will be implemented. However, the instructional methods may vary. In the following quote is observed the synthesis of much that has been earlier stated. This then provides a fitting summary and insight into the educational practices and principles of Paramahansa Yoganand as they derive from his philosophy and teachings. While founding his ashrams and then the schools within the ashramas, Paramahansa maintained the high ideals of the ancient rishis of India with loving strictness. He demonstrated by his own self-realization that God is one though he may be called by many names, and various are the paths that lead to him. Therefore, Paramahansa Yoganand taught the children in the ashrama school to respect all religions and avoid narrow-mindedness and intolerance. As God dwells in all body temples, none should insult him by discriminating against any individual because of caste, creed, color, or race, but rather be the divine friend of all by striving to see God in all. As man is a threefold being having a body, mind and soul, Paramahansa taught that by harmoniously developing these three God-given instruments to their fullest potential, each individual, as a child of God, can experience the soul's fulfillment and find true happiness. The student is to care for his body temple through understanding the need for cleanliness, proper exercise, and a cheerful and loving heart. He is to develop his mind by learning methods of right determination and willpower, cultivating memory, right thoughts, and creative expressions, and discovering the joy of sincere inquiry after knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. He is to nurture his soul by the practice of right action and devotional scientific worship of God, thus developing the soul qualities of peace, joy, wisdom, and love. Paramahansa taught the children dharma, the eternals which serve as true guideposts of right endeavor for every circumstance of life. He gave the children the torch of spirituality, which the rishis of India have held aloft for the world since time immemorial. He gave them the clear resplendent light of God, which has awakened noble men and saints through the ages. He so uniquely combined the spiritual with the practical curriculum that the children became living examples of the complete, harmoniously developed individual who can not only successfully make his way in the modern world, but further grace it as a living expression of dharma, wisdom, and divine love. These are the ideals Paramahansa Yoganand lived and taught in his ashramas and schools. Yogoda Satsanga Society of India perpetuates these ideals in its guidance of the Great Guru Society and educational institutions, all of which have grown from his first ashramas in Calcutta, Dihika, and Ranchi. Conclusion. In the introduction to this book, two principal considerations were advanced. Education must necessarily be viewed as the primary agency, responsible for the salutary status of the culture of which it is a part, and an exploration of a contemporary philosophical development, which is clearly within the orthodox Hindu philosophical tradition, together with its representative educational system, stands as a viable endeavor in the search for solutions to Western, as well as Eastern educational and consequent social problems. These 2 points are now reconsidered in light of the preceding discussion. The fidelity of Yoganand's philosophy and teachings to the ancient Vedic tradition consistently reveals itself as compellingly unequivocal. This was demonstrated to some degree in this small discussion by identifying and briefly discussing certain cardinal doctrinal elements. This demonstration is important to undertake, for oftentimes contemporary statements of traditional works lose substantially in accuracy, completeness, and philosophic context, thus rendering themselves impotent, ineffectual, and erroneous. The central thesis is that Vedic philosophy affirms that the nature of man is both known by some and knowable by all. This knowledge, it explicitly avows, can be directly apprehended by anyone intent on so doing, for the system specifically prescribes and embodies the scientific means to do so. And any truly viable system of total education necessarily takes this knowledge into full consideration. Paramahansa Yogananda was not one to point out the shortcomings of a nation, group, institution, or individual without offering a straightforward and practical solution. Educators of today serve a vital role in shaping the leaders of tomorrow. And with the leaders of tomorrow tests, as Aristotle proclaimed, the fate of empires. It makes little difference whether one is a formal educator, administrator, philosopher, or psychologist, for all share the responsibility for the present state of education, India's future, and ultimately, to some degree, the world at large. Perhaps, it would serve us well if from time to time we reflect on whether or not our efforts and visions are at parity with the true necessary and sufficient requirement attendant to the educational tasks at hand and those which stand before us.